The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Go Cowboys! This is Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw Dating, preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys, and broadcasting live from Dallas Cowboys World Headquarters at the Star. Now, your hosts, Jess Navarez, Aisha Morrison, Kelsey Charles, and Jane Slater.
Welcome into Girls Talk, Boys Talk. I am your host, Jane Slater of the NFL Network, joined by Aisha Morrison. And, of course, we've got Jess Navarez, and we've got Kelsey Charles joining us remotely. Ladies, let's get right into it. News of the day, Dak Prescott. Here's how it all went down last night.
Thought I jammed it. I mean, I've hit my hand on helmets or bodies a lot in my career, and never really had anything, maybe a jammed finger here, and I actually thought that's what it was. Just the next play, realized I couldn't grip the ball, let the sideline know. And then when I got off, I told the trainers the same thing. I was just like, I can't grip. I feel like if you yank it, I'll be okay. And no, came in, got x-rays, and things are different. Yeah, it was tough. I mean, it was tough. Veteran defense there. Made it tough on us. We didn't help ourselves with penalties, just bad timing. Just didn't play clean altogether. And then when you put all those things together, you get a three-point game as we just put out. Yeah, I'll be there to support him. I'll be there to support this whole team and coaching staff and everybody, every step through it. And for Coop, just continue to prepare, continue to approach the way that he's done. I mean, for 6 years now. So, I mean, going back to his rookie year, I mean, Coop's always been a guy that I've turned to, whether it be the scheme or whether it just be for help. And now I'll be able to help him in these next several weeks and just hopefully get the best out of him and the best out of this team.
All right, so let's break it down. It was so ugly. It was even uglier if you were there for the postgame, ladies. Jerry Jones typically waits in the owner's box before he comes down into the locker room. Mm-hmm. And he walked towards us, and, you know, I've seen him disappointed. Rams lost playoffs on the road, 49ers playoff loss last year. I don't think that any of us realized, though, that the thing that was upsetting him obviously was the severity of Dak Prescott. So most of the players typically come through. We see Ezekiel Elliott, we see CeeDee Lamb, and we're asking questions, where are the rest of the players? They're not walking through the tunnel to the locker room the way they normally do. Sounds like they went in through the back. I've been meaning to ask people about that. I thought that was interesting. So Jerry then comes out, and Chris Beam, who works here, tells Cowboys, informing me that my face said it all. When Jerry said that we're going to be without Dak for a few weeks, I was absolutely shocked because I think we all saw it happen, right? He sort of gets his hand slapped away, and it felt very much like, I cover the Saints too, it felt very much like the UCL injury to Drew Brees, which had him out for 5 weeks. Of course, there they had Teddy Bridgewater, and I think they went 5-0 as a result of that. Not the situation here in Dallas. They're saying it's going to be about 6 to 8 weeks. We just had Mike McCarthy doing the presser. He said he didn't have an update, but that surgery happened this afternoon. Talked to Dak in the locker room after. Dak could have gone and gotten surgery last night. As he described it, that's how he's wired. But they're putting it's going to be a pen and a plate in that right thumb to stabilize it. Not jammed, pretty significant injury, and a clean break. All right, so that's the news and notes of the day as it relates to Dak Prescott. Let's get right into it. Aisha, your immediate reaction, because, again, I know you weren't in the locker room. Where were you when you got the news update about the severity of Dak? Because, as I said, as I'm standing there with Jerry, even I'm shocked by it.
I believe I went to the game.
Yeah.
And I was walking down. The stairs, and I saw, something flash on Twitter about it, and I was like, y'all tripping. Ain't nothing wrong with him. I figured he just hit his hand and it wasn't anything serious. And then, the flood of information of Jerry, speaking on it coming out. And I heard Bucks fans going by like, Jerry just came out and said that and I was like, oh my goodness, this is really happening. He's really injured again. What does this mean for this team right now? And as we look at the backup quarterback situation, I know we're going to get into that later. This is it just was very disheartening. I could tell it was very deflating. And it's also deflating. I feel like it's also deflating because just for Dak as the player, you have to empathize for the fact that he is, come back from the injury he had before, and now he's here again. So I was immediately taken aback like you guys were, and my mind started processing, where do we go from here? And I know we're going to talk about that later.
Yeah, I was also at the game, and my parents actually flew in for this game, and they were not happy to say at the very. I know they were not happy to say at the very least. They flew in with some of their friends who also it was their first Cowboys game.
Wow.
Yeah. So we were all walking out, and my phone kind of started going off for the Blog and the Boys channel that we have. And I saw Dak surgery. I just saw 2 words, log on Twitter. I'm going through, I'm walking out, bumping into people, just kind of central focused on my phone there. And I saw it, and everyone around me heard me telling my dad. So all the fans are asking, just as we're walking out, what's going on? What happened? Is it bad? And it's like, I don't know. We don't really have a lot of information right now. I'm just trying to get back to the car to figure out what's going on so I can walk and not be holding up traffic or anything, right? But, it was disheartening. And the last game that my family and I went to was the playoff game as well. So I will say that walk of shame felt very long.
So your parents aren't allowed in the building anymore.
I think I'm bad luck too. Hey, I think I'm bad luck too, because I hadn't come to any games in the last couple years because I've been deployed.
Yeah.
I went to the Niners game. Came to this game.
Yeah.
So we're not getting you credentials. You guys are,
It's like
your family and you are not allowed in the building.
Here's the thing. That walk of shame after the 49ers game felt very long to the car. This one felt 10 times longer. Yeah. And the Bucs fans were actually being very nice as we were walking to the car.
Well,
they
didn't
bad.
play a great game either, and we'll get into that in a bit. Kelsey, what was your thoughts as this is all sort of unraveling?
Yeah, I mean, actually, my parents, too. You can hear my voice. Between the UT game and this game, I was not having a good time. So I lost my voice because I'm just – disheartening is the best way to describe this weekend. And I actually took a little bit of an issue with the way Jerry described it. We'll talk about that later, I'm sure. And he called it surprising, and I have to honestly disagree. But it was shocking. I do think it was shocking to see how bad it actually went down.
Yeah.
And I don't know what my deal is with having a kinship with the Dallas Cowboys quarterbacks, but I actually have had this same exact surgery that Dak has got today. I didn't get the plate, but I did get a pin in my right thumb. Oh. And what's crazy is that I was that kid in middle school it was high school actually. I did it during dodgeball. So like we couldn't play dodgeball the rest of the year. It was my fault, but it was like this small little injury that you just thought you kind of, stubbed your finger, and it turns out that it's actually way bigger than what you thought, and you have to get the surgery, and you have to get a cast, and it becomes like this whole issue. And, I mean, now it's about a survival mode. Like, how do you keep this boat afloat for the coming weeks so that the second half of the season – this team can actually be some semblance of a contender? I mean, if there's one, we'll talk silver linings, but at least this is happening in the NFC East and not another division.
Kels, how long did your recovery take with the similar surgery?
It was about the 6 to 8 week mark. And I honestly, it's the worst because you literally have to get a cast that goes to the base of your forefingers, at the top of it encompasses your hand. Your thumb is all the way up, and then your cast almost goes down to your elbow. So it looks like you broke your forearm or something like that, and it's just this big, bulky, annoying cast. And granted, this was 15 years ago, but still, it was one of the most painful and obnoxious injuries I've ever had. And you're talking to a girl that has broken her back.
Wow.
So it is just it's so annoying, and it really does interfere with your life. And again, we talked about this last week when we were talking about our concerns about Dak behind this line and, expressing the whole shoe issue, which turned out to potentially maybe be a little bit more. And saying,
I'm going there.
Right. This quarterback has some serious issues that he has dealt with injury-wise. And I am genuinely concerned not only just for this team to recover from those injuries, but also his personal mentality and how he recuperates moving forward.
Yep.
I'm glad you brought up the, we discussed Cleatgate at length. That's what I've called it, Cleatgate last week at length, because it felt more severe than what they were telling. I just, having covered the
You
league as
literally
long as
called
I
that, Jane.
You did.
Well, and it's not so much that I want to say, look, I'm raising my hand to see I was right, because the ankle didn't feel limited at all yesterday, right?
No,
No.
he
So
wasn't.
that the ankle wasn't the issue. It's just they weren't as forthcoming with the information as I think a lot of us might have liked them to. It was more than just too tight of a cleat.
And
I wish they had just stuck with the story. And Jay Glazer is very close with Steven and Jerry and Mike McCarthy. And so when Jay Glazer puts it out there, he's getting it right from the source. And so when he said he felt like there was like a pop of some sort, and they're like, oh, well, it's just a pop of the scar tissue, and that typically happens. Well, why didn't that happen last year? You did get x-rays, is what it sounds like. But what was more concerning to me is Melissa Stark, who does the broadcast, we work at NFL Network together, she had a conversation with him. He said, well, I don't know where Jay got it, but I felt like it kind of felt dead. And then it came alive again.
Oh.
And I got to be honest. I said, no, he didn't say that. Really? She's like, yeah, I mean, that's kind of how he described it. I'm like, I hope to God that's not some nerve damage. That's interesting to me. And so even Melissa was confused by it and ultimately didn't go with it on TV, because I think we both just sat there and said, I don't know what to make of that. So I honestly, heading into the game, was nervous about the offensive line. Saw Connor McGovern go down. Farniok went in there and did as good a job as I guess as you're gonna do.
Yes.
But you could only be serviceable for so long, and so I was literally keeping an eye on the ankle the whole game. But when this hand situation happened, we watched it when Shaq Barrett came across at him, and I thought the same thing that Dak did. I thought, okay, he's just jammed it.
Yeah.
And so when we went in the locker room and we're interviewing CeeDee Lamb, and I revealed to CeeDee, no, he's out for a few weeks. He goes, oh well. That's the first I'm hearing it. And Cooper Rush. So
Wow.
a lot of these guys didn't have the full complement of information. And then one of the things that will stand out to me as I look over at Dak, and I'm kind of whispering to him, like, sorry, like mouthing to him. He's kind of gripping the wrapped hand the whole time. And he's just looks like he's just in a daze, just like sort of staring out into space, because I'm just thinking you guys are talking about mentality. If he felt some sort of weird pop last week with the ankle, you've got to be nervous about that if you've had surgery twice.
Yep.
Now you've got this hand situation. It's like you go into the season. Last year it was shoulder, calf, ankle, all of that stuff. And then now you're dealing with this. It does start to get in your head when the injuries start stacking up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's what I kept thinking of. And Kelsey, I know you're kind of alluding to it. I think the frustrating part for all of us is in camp. We had questions about the wide receivers, which we'll get into. We had questions about this offensive line, and we had questions about the depth of your quarterback room. And all of it is coming to bite you right now.
Yep.
It's very reminiscent of, like, I'm just being honest, going to that 49ers game. All of the Cowboys' deficiencies were on full display.
Yeah.
Yep.
There was no way to avoid it. You couldn't hide it. You saw the penalties. You saw the offensive line struggle. You saw literally the run defense struggle. You saw every single thing. And then you come to this game and you see the exact same situation.
Yep.
And there's no, like, what are we doing? And I understand, like, you said that Dak was just sitting in a daze. What does he have to feel like right now? I mean, there has to be something they can do that's better on this offensive line for him, because that I don't know. I just feel like we talk about it all the time. This quarterback is not he's a top 10 quarterback. Mm-hmm. And we understand that offensive line is not something that comes, just regularly. It's not an easy thing to come across. But you just would think that there would just be more of an urgency to take care of this gentleman. Given his story, given what he's done to get to this point, and what he's done for this organization. So I'm just extremely frustrated for him and just this whole situation as a whole.
And I think,
honestly,
and real quick, guys, I think the issue is now, given where we're at in the season,
Tracking.
I mean, already you're seeing Tampa's. They're going to obviously have issues now with they've got their offensive line woes that they're dealing with. I mean, injuries are popping up. Finding these guys out in the street is tough to find. You're not going to find a wide receiver right now.
can't.
You're not going to find a quarterback right now. Although Mike McCarthy in the presser said they had a list of available quarterbacks.
Said he had a list of all the quarterbacks in the NFL in front of him.
Right, but you're not going to go out. The Eagles aren't going to give you Gardner Minshew. I don't think the 49ers are going to just be interested in necessarily trading Jimmy Garoppolo within the division. Is Josh McCown around? Seriously, I'm dead serious on that.
I'd pick up the
Ryan
phone right now.
Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly,
Do you like your Amazon job?
Honestly, if they're talking about keeping it in house, which it's typically what they do,
they're gonna do it.
I understand the conversation of Cooper Rush and all of that good stuff, but if you want to not, Mike McCarthy said they're not changing the playbook at all. But if you wanted to insert a gentleman that can maybe do some of the things that Dak does, wouldn't that be a Will Grier? Wouldn't he give you a better
what was
chance?
interesting is, guys, we were having a conversation in training camp that Will Grier, until he got injured, and so a lot of fans didn't get to see him in the preseason, Will Grier was pushing Cooper Rush. And
Yeah, he was.
So it's so odd to me, and I get, him being a veteran, Cooper Rush being a veteran, having snaps, but then you just say to yourself, like, that's what I'm looking at. If you want to compete, I think if they're trying to continue to compete, he gives them the best chance, and that's just how I feel, especially with the offensive line possibly like not being, super well put together. You want a guy that's a little bit more mobile, no?
I think having covered this team the last couple of years, guys, I think that because I know Dak is a huge fan of Cooper Rush.
Tracking, and I understand.
And so I think because of their time together, his knowledge of the playbook, Cooper makes the most sense at this point, given the urgency of the situation. If this had happened in training camp, I think there would have been a competition for that starting job. But I think at this point, it's Cooper's job unless there's somebody there. I mean, look, the Jason Peters thing, I had thrown out a couple of names before Jason got here. They got lucky because he's from East Texas. That's what I'm saying. Look, Josh and the McCown brothers are right there in Jacksonville, Texas still, I believe. I mean, I don't know, Kelsey.
I don't know.
I just, honestly, you guys, like, I feel like the thing, Aisha, that you just said, and I actually want to kind of dive into this for a quick second, is we've heard this team tell us, as people in the media, as people that are fans, several narratives that I think it's important for us to kind of have our eyes wide open as, people that are ingesting this information. You heard last week about the, quote, non-injury or whatever it was with Dak, and then maybe you're hearing that something else is actually the truth. Mike McCarthy saying they're not changing the playbook. Like, I honestly, spare me with that conversation whatsoever, because there's absolutely no way that you don't have to make adjustments when you go from your franchise starting quarterback to a guy who, honestly, he's had minimal starting opportunities in the league. Yep. You cannot tell me that. Any smart person who is looking at the lay of the land knows that that's impossible.
And
that's absolutely impossible.
And you won on the road. They keep bringing up the fact he had the one win in Minneapolis, and granted, it was a huge win. But you had Amari Cooper, who was telling us, "Give me the ball." Yep. When CD wanted it, it was like, "Give me the ball." And we're gonna get into the wide receiver conversation after this break. I've been already like telling you guys, I don't know how I feel about that wide receiver room and CD Lamb being the 88, but the stats back it up the other day. Guys, let's go ahead and just jump into a break real quick, because I know we want to deep dive into this offense and how rough it was. So we'll go ahead and we'll get in the break. When we come back, let's talk about our confidence in this wide receiver room after having a lack of confidence in it heading into the season. This is the Girls Talk, Boys Talk podcast, brought to you by Jigsaw Dating, the official dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
Todd thought it would be secure to jog in the cheetah savanna. Todd believed the big cat repellent he bought online was reliable. And now, Todd is trying to be faster than this cheetah that can run 80 miles per hour. But the good news is, Todd has AT&T 5G that is fast, reliable, and secure. And he learned the best thing to do is stop running and toss her the backpack with the beef stew. AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure. It's not complicated.
5G requires compatible plan and device. 5G may not be available in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
What do you call a group of grown men and women with their faces painted silver and blue who get together every week to share a 3-hour-long ritual of jumping, singing, and toasting Miller Lite in 10-gallon hats while yelling, "How about them Cowboys?" You call it Miller Time in Dallas. Here's to the Cowboys. Here's to the original light beer. It's Miller Time. Celebrate responsibly. 2021 Miller Brewing Company, Fort Worth, Texas.
The Cowboys way, where 16 Hall of Famers and 5 championships shows us what success looks like. Where turkey is always the second best part of Thanksgiving Day. Where we are all defined by one single thing, the star. Where we as fans know it's our job to keep the tradition going. Bank of America is proud to be the official bank of the Dallas Cowboys and to support the quest of living life the Cowboys way. Copyright 2020, Bank of America Corporation.
Little Sweet! Did you get to work on time?
Yeah, but I just realized it's Sunday.
Little Sweet says head on home. Dr. Pepper's on its way. So sweet, unique. Baby, there's nothing better. I bet you've probably done something that deserves a Dr. Pepper. Did you invest your nest egg in an NFT?
Yeah, and I don't even know what that is.
It's a non-fungible token. Everyone's done something that deserves a Dr. Pepper.
Welcome back to Girls Talk, Boys Talk here at the Star in Frisco. I am your host of the NFL Network, Jane Slater, joined by Aisha Morrison, Jess Navarez, and I have got Kelsey Charles joining us remotely. All right, one of the questions that came up today of Stephen Jones on 105.3 The Fan was the lack of playing your starters in the preseason. Was that an issue? It was Stephen Jones who said that everything's going to be up for scrutiny. I asked Mike McCarthy that specifically, and he said he didn't necessarily think so because they opened up the game with a 14-play drive. It was 14 plays for 54 yards, 558 there, and yes, they got 3 points on the board, and that was the last time that the Cowboys saw the scoreboard. There was a commitment to their run, so I liked that. But then let's talk about the second drive for the Cowboys. Elliott gets you 7 yards. Then what did we say on Friday? Death, taxes, and penalties for the Cowboys. That was their first penalty. They had a 5-yard false start for the penalty. You had 2 incompletes to Lamb and Schultz. 3 plays for 2 yards. All right, then let's get into your third Cowboys drive to knock out your first quarter. Turpin brings it out 20 yards. Rico Dowdle gets the penalty for holding. That gives you 10 yards. You get Pollard for 1, Schultz for 5 yards. Go 3 and out. That's 18 plays, 3 drives, 3.7 yards a play, 48 yards passing, 19 rushing. They were 2 for 4 in third down efficiency. Time of possession, 8:16. The biggest thing that stood out to them today when Mike McCarthy was asked about their deficiencies was their issues on third downs. I think they were, 3 for 15?
Yep,
this was
20%.
A problem. Yeah, they had this problem last year. And so I'll start with you, Aisha, because I love the fact that you're such a film junkie. We joked about this last week that I needed to bring up the article, and I wish that I had. There was an article by Peter King talking about the Vic Fangio blueprint and what he did to the Cowboys. You can expect to see more teams do to them this year. It was a fascinating article. Did you see that when you looked at the film?
Yeah, I mean, Tampa Bay really, honestly, they ran their base and they rushed 4 and then they dropped, 6, 7 guys into coverage. And it was frustrating for me because last year, I just was telling you guys, I felt like that defenses were doing that to the Cowboys and they were daring you to run the ball. They were daring the Cowboys to run the ball because they knew that the Cowboys couldn't run the ball. And they were daring them to pass the ball and they couldn't run the ball. So it was a mixture of both. So now this year, you saw success in the run. I believe that Zeke averaged like 5 yards a carry. Like it was success. They were successful. Some of the schemes were successful early in that game running the ball, but then there was no separation from the receivers. Dak was delivering the ball late. He was double clutching because he wasn't sure because those windows were so tight. There's the lack of a vertical threat on this team. Just completely demoralized them last year. It allowed Tampa's DBs to play down on everything. They were keying on everything. Even Mike McCarthy talked about today that they were biting on every route. Like they knew, like they were jumping every route. Like, and when that happens, like the 49ers game, somebody been studying. Somebody know what you do well and what you don't do well.
Right. What did they say in years past with Jason Garrett, how predictable the offense was? That they would literally call out the play across the line of scrimmage?
Yep. And the even more frustrating thing is that there were in the beginning of that game when the run was working. Then you saw Kellen come in there and start doing some, like,
Fancy
some trick play things that put you behind the chains. And when you start talking about the penalties, they did throw on first down a couple of times, but they were pretty successful when they were in those first few plays.
Yeah.
After that penalty, they could not overcome the penalties. They could not overcome getting behind the chains. And when you don't have a vertical threat or when you have guys that can stretch the field, that's what happens because who cares? I can play over the top of everyone that you have right now. I don't have to respect what you're doing. And you could see on tape, I watched that game this morning, they had no respect for what our receivers brought to the table, to include CeeDee Lamb.
Well, and real quick, guys, I think the other thing that really stands out to me about this team is their inability to make halftime adjustments.
Yes.
When they came out, their first drive out of the half, they went to Elliott twice. They get a penalty. Elliott again. Then you go to Pollard for a 3rd and 6, and then that's when Devin White sacks Dak, and you're literally punting it away. And then when you look at the Bucs, they come out Fournette 11 yards, 9 yards, 17 yards. They just keep going at them, and so you had all of these power runs from the Bucs, and you got the sense that while the defense I thought did a great job for Dallas, and we'll get into that. The Cowboys just didn't have answers at the half, and I said, having covered quite a few Tom Brady games. There was a Falcons game that stood out to me about 2 years ago. He put up more points in the third quarter than he did in the entire first half. He is so good at halftime adjustments. Yeah. And I just thought that was something that the Cowboys absolutely struggled with.
Well, and here's the thing, too.
Sorry, Kelsey.
Sorry, Kelsey. I need to get this off my chest because last week, Jane, we laughed because I said, I'm the most confident that we're going to see penalties. Remember that? And what did we do? But what ended up killing us like it did the last time we played Tampa Bay, but even worse this time because all we've heard all of this offseason was how the discipline issue is fixed and it's corrected, and that's not going to be an issue going forward. I'm sorry, but of course the Bucs aren't going to respect a team that's doing the exact same thing that they ruined their playoff game with last season in penalty. 127 penalties last season. And I'm sorry, but the amount of penalties during this game I expected from the rookie players, the younger players, they were not all coming from them. And to me, it just showed the extreme lack of chemistry within the offense, and that's the scary part, is they couldn't establish a run. They ditched the run early. We see these fancy trick plays from Kellen Moore early on. Okay, if you're going to do that, but keep doing it. You're going back to the same thing that does not work. You're trying to force these passes. And I asked Jane earlier, does this fall on Dak calling off the run, or does this fall on Kellen Moore? Because at the end of the day, if you establish that run, Zeke was trying to bust for some holes. If you kept establishing him, let's see, he had 10 carries for 52 yards. There is no reason Ezekiel Elliott should only touch that ball 10 times within that game. Absolutely no reason.
Honestly, Jess, you talked about respect, and I think that's a really great point. But here's the thing about respect is that it's earned. And I do not know what this Dallas Cowboys team, and quite frankly, while we're talking about the team, this front office has done to earn the respect of other teams in the league. I actually, again, took issue with Vic Fangio saying that they had the blueprint. But you know what? Maybe they do. And it really is a definition of insanity to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting results.
Facts.
I think David Hellman, one of my dear, dear friends, I know you guys are all familiar, had a really great point on his show the other day. And he talked about the fact that you go out and you pay your franchise quarterback, right? And then what are you doing to equip him with the weapons? It's not fair, and nor is it logical, if we're being frank, to expect a guy to go out there, you pay him, and you're like, oh, I paid him so much. We could go all day and talk about how it's the markets work a certain way. Yeah, you're going to pay him a lot of money, but you got to give him the tools, you guys. You got to give him the tools. The Chiefs, they went out and got Patrick Mahomes what he needed. What is this front office doing besides not paying guys that could literally be starters on this offense, key impact players on the line as offensive weapons for this team? And they go, no, you know what? I'm going to go down the street to the dollar store and expect Neiman Marcus results. It's absolute insanity, and it makes no sense.
I actually really love the analogy. I think the issue that I have, though, is Dak felt off in that game, too. And I think, look, I'm a huge fan of Dak, and this is not trashing Dak.
Oh, he didn't play well.
But there were questions, even when I was looking at the 11 targets intended for CeeDee Lamb, and he only hauled in 2 of those. I think some of those were absolutely CeeDee Lamb. I watched the game. I did not watch back the All-22 this morning. But I just wanted when I even asked CD and Dak, how much extra work every time we get a chance. But when you're not playing and you're putting more emphasis on the joint practices versus live game, I just thought they needed preseason chemistry. That was my opinion on it. And then I would also submit there are a lot of other quarterbacks in the league, Aaron Rodgers, who have done more with less.
Right.
Right. And so I'm not sitting here knocking Dak necessarily. And I think let's talk about the fact that Jalen Tolbert, who you picked up in the draft this year, wasn't even dressed out. Instead, you had Houston out of San Antonio, an undrafted free agent who was out there.
Yeah.
Who got prime targets.
He got
important targets at that.
I remember I was asked on ESPN radio when I was doing a hit last week, Dennis Houston, and I said, who? And then here's a guy that's stressing out over Jalen Tolbert. And so
well, and you can tell Dak was trying to force the chemistry with him, and it just was not clicking after.
And
man,
again, I don't know if that was because of the pressure that he was getting in his face. If it was if their receivers were not in the right place. I know they started playing a lot of man coverage.
It was a mixture of a lot of things, but I will say that I do think I used to be very about preseason, but with it being so short,
you need at least one.
Yeah,
you see the Bills. Even though the Bucs didn't look super special yesterday with some of the things they did,
Tom played in a preseason game.
He did play in a preseason game. I watched the preseason game, and baby, let me tell you, it's so funny because we talk about the preseason. We say they're not going to show you anything. They're not going to. I watched the preseason game of the Bucs, and a lot of what they did to us yesterday offensively was pretty much the same.
It's just establishing
quick outs.
Obviously,
they got some play down the field. Before Chris Godwin got hurt, they got a couple plays down the field. But prior to that, it was quick outs, quick release, and not a lot of quarterbacks can do what Tom does.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to replicate. But I do agree. I'm at that point where I do think that preseason is starting at least a game, at least a drive, something.
But let's talk about that. Tom didn't have a great game yesterday either. Okay, he found the end zone once. You lost Chris Godwin, your wide receiver, in that game. With the exception of that absurd Julio Jones catch. Julio Jones had a day. They were trying to give you the game. Mike McCarthy even conceded that. And it was like, as much as you even tried to... San Francisco tried to give you the game in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think my concern sometimes with this team is I'm told the work ethic's great. They're motivated. Remember last week, as they've turned it up a notch. They're locked in. They don't feel... It's like you punch them in the face.
There's no counter.
And sometimes I worry that they don't get back up. It was the minute Tom scored in the end zone, I felt that's when it felt like, okay, we're in the fourth quarter, 7:08 now, right after, as we're watching it here in the studio. Right here, it started to feel like they felt like this game had just gotten away from them.
Yeah.
They weren't playing. Remember, you play through the whistle. I worry about this team sometimes.
Well, go ahead, Jess.
Something that I was going to say, that how much of that falls on the discipline aspect that we have been mocking over and over and over? Because here's my thing. Terrence Steele, you have 3 penalties in a row. Not 1, which is bad enough. Not 2, which is even worse. You have 3. And I get we don't really have other options. The Cowboys don't really have other options to put in there. I'm sorry. As a fan, I don't want to see any more of him. Sit him for at least one series, make a statement, or take him out of the game. That is unacceptable for me to see a player have 3 penalties in a row, and especially going into a game where the penalties were already hurting us the entire game. Mm-hmm. You look back, and those penalties ended up being vital points in something that could have given the Cowboys momentum, and they killed it every single time.
And so 10 penalties for 73 yards.
Exactly.
And it's frustrating with Terrence Steele because, he has worked his tail off, but they're just the accountability that has to be taken on this team. And it's not just for fans or anything. It's for each other. Because we're sitting here talking about this offense, and this defense held them to 19 points. It felt like the Chiefs game again, where Micah does all that he can. The defense comes out. The offense is inept. Where I remember, I think Coop and CD had COVID, if I'm not mistaken. They were out. And I remember the struggle, but seeing this defense just battle back. And so I look at the other side of the ball, and your defense was on the field so much that towards the end of the game, you started seeing them getting gassed out. There's some injuries that came up as well. And when you talk about camaraderie in a locker room and stuff like that, they talk about playing for each other. I'm like, where is that?
Yeah.
Where is that right now, y'all? Because I didn't feel that at all yesterday. Go ahead, Kelsey. Sorry.
No, accountability is a great way to describe it, though,
Yep.
Aisha. Like, I love that you guys are saying that. And Jess, like, I feel that mentality. You talk about you want to sit a player. My whole concern, though, is that I really do feel like accountability needs to spread to the front office as well.
And
Because when you talk about wanting to rotate someone out because they are not being disciplined enough, and like a Terrence Steele, you may love that guy as a coach. You may think he's, quote, the right type of guy. But if he's not performing on the field and you need to make a switch, what puzzle pieces do you have to plug in besides not many?
Who?
And whose fault is that?
Right.
I mean, genuinely, whose fault is that? Because I think it really does go back to, again, I don't feel like this team has done a good job of setting up these players or these coaches for success, because you really do have limited resources. And I just think we have to, again, be accountable to that. And when I say we, not me, because I wasn't the one making the call, but, like, I think the front office has to wear that mantle and understand that, like, you are the reason. Look in the mirror, like, this is largely your doing.
And you know what's interesting, too, is we heard from Terrence Steele in the locker room, and we have that sound. Jazz, if you want to play that sound real quick so we can listen to it, that'd be good.
Especially, with me, I had 3, I think, pre-snap penalties. It's unexcusable. That's something we can't have. Coach puts a big emphasis on that. So that's definitely something I'm going to have to work on in the future for sure. But we can't have that.
Here's the thing. Why do we have to work on it now? You should have been working on it. Every single person on this team should have been working on penalties after the 127 penalties. I'm going to keep that number going all year, and you're going to get so sick of hearing me say it, but the penalties are going to be what kills us, and they kill the momentum, which, I mean, you see what happens. Exactly what you were talking about, Jane. That fourth quarter, absolutely no momentum, no motivation, no accountability, nothing from the Cowboys that said, hey, we're even going to try to push to just get in the end zone. Being the only team in the NFL on Sunday that played, given we haven't seen any Monday night games, to not make a touchdown, unacceptable.
I think what stands out to me, too, though, is when you talk about Mike puts such an emphasis on it. If I screw up in my job, right? On Sundays, so like we do game days, and it's 40-second hits. If I go 43, 45, they truck it. It sounds dumb, but that's 3 seconds, then 5 seconds, then 10 seconds that I've taken away from our studio analysts. They'll bench us. In other words, you don't get to do game day the following week, and I've seen them do it to reporters. There are consequences when you don't meet expectations that we have for our show. What are the consequences when these guys aren't living up to the standard that is we have to because the field position is important.
I was going to talk about that as
when you have these penalties that are costing you field positions and you're going 3 and out, or it's a 2nd and 16 or a 2nd and 20, that's why the penalties are a big deal. And again, coming off of last year, and Mike I'll never forget, it was before the Broncos game. Mike said it was a point of emphasis, something we worked on. I think that was one of their most heavily penalized games, was it not? The Broncos last year, it was a rough one.
And
so
the Raiders game. Let's not forget that one.
I feel like Mike has done a sort of a good job of endearing himself to this team. He's almost become like the players' coach, right? He's given them some of the off days. We're going to cut practice earlier. We're focusing on the bodies. We're not going to play your body in preseason. Players love that, right? Because it allows their bodies, you're not putting so much tread on their tires. Is that a good thing, though?
I think it is if they're being productive.
Yeah.
If you're working on the things that need to be worked on, you're not giving me 7 penalties in a game. You're not giving me how many yardage in penalties, Jane? When you're doing those things, sure, take your off day. Until then, absolutely not. There's too much work that needs to be done. There is way, way too many mistakes that were made. Going through those locker room sound bites, you had Zeke saying, hey, we need to clean up penalties, clean up protection. You had Tyler Smith saying, hey, we had flags and missed opportunities. You had Dalton Schultz talking about too many penalties. You had almost every single player in those post-game interviews in the locker room saying penalties, penalties, penalties. Why are we still talking about penalties? I'm so sick of hearing the word penalties and Dallas Cowboys in the same sentence.
Honestly, though, I feel like this, I keep saying this, I look at a guy like a Terrence Steele, and I know this coaching staff loves him, but it was not that long ago, you guys, and by not that long ago, I mean last season, when we're sitting here saying this man has not been set up for success. He's an undrafted free agent out of Texas Tech. He literally, the commentary about the Terrence Steele experiment needs to be over.
They
right?
love him,
like,
though. They love. When I was at Combine, listening to Mike McCarthy and this staff talk about their love of Terrence Steele was the most fascinating conversation. His
is it
agent,
realistic?
His agent is Eric Burkhart, who also represents Kyler Murray. Eric kept telling me they love him. I'm like, there's a lot of people that I like that aren't great at their jobs, Kelsey. I work with a lot of people in this business that are very likable, but I don't think they're particularly good at their jobs.
Yes.
Both can be the same. Both can be right? So I don't know. Yeah. We've harped enough on the deficiencies of this team. How about we give them some silver linings? We've got 5 minutes left in the show. Let's quickly go to a break. That's how much time we need to go over the silver linings. Not a lot of time. The Girls Talk, Boys Talk podcast brought to you by Jigsaw Dating, the official dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. We'll be right back.
Sweet. Did you get to work on time?
Yeah, but I just realized it's Sunday.
Little Sweet says head on home. Dr. Pepper's on its way. So sweet, unique. Baby, there's nothing better. I bet you've probably done something that deserves a Dr. Pepper. Did you invest your nest egg in an NFT?
Yeah, and I don't even know what that is. It's a non-fungible token.
Everyone's done something that deserves a Dr. Pepper.
Todd thought it would be secure to jog in the cheetah savanna. Todd believed the big cat repellent he bought online was reliable. And now, Todd is trying to be faster than this cheetah that can run 80 miles per hour. But the good news is, Todd has AT&T 5G that is fast, reliable, and secure. And he learned the best thing to do is stop running and toss her the backpack with the beef stew. AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure. It's not complicated.
5G requires compatible plan and device. 5G may not be available in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Brace yourself for an existential question. Has your butt been having enough fun lately? Have you been treating it well? Has it been going places? If not, then it's about time you start using SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the best way to get your butt tickets to live events. Just ask the thousands of other butts who have rated it the #1 ticketing app. So what are you waiting for? Download the app now or visit SeatGeek.com to get tickets to sports, concerts, and live events and make your butt happy. SeatGeek. Get your seat in a seat.
What do you call a group of grown men and women with their faces painted silver and blue who get together every week to share a 3-hour-long ritual of jumping, sinking, and toasting Miller Lite in 10-gallon hats while yelling, "How about them Cowboys?" You call it Miller Time in Dallas. Here's to the Cowboys. Here's to the original light beer. It's Miller Time. Celebrate responsibly. 2021 Miller Brewing Company, Fort Worth, Texas.
Welcome back to Girls Talk, Boys Talk. We are live here from the Star, breaking down an absolutely catastrophic day at AT&T Stadium, or night rather. It was a long one for me, guys. I got there at 6:45 in the morning, did all the pregame coverage, had to go back, cover this game, and then the postgame, which was just
brutal.
Just
Salute to
an
you,
absolute mess. I love John Machota saying that 25.1 million viewers got to watch that one, largest audience for NBC's Sunday Night Opener since 2015.
Oh,
that was a good one, right?
Such a good
I loved
year.
that Romo was trending too on Twitter today. Guys, I know he hasn't turned in his retirement papers, but knock it off.
yeah, right.
Okay, silver linings. Let's do the silver lining playbook here, guys. The silver lining for me was Brett Maher.
Oh,
Kicking
yes.
was not an issue in this year's opener.
We are scraping the barrel.
Brett Maher putting 3 points on the board. Can you imagine if he didn't and they were shut out of this one? All right, Aisha.
I'm sorry, y'all.
Your silver lining.
My silver lining, tater tots.
Tyler
With
Smith,
the-
you had a good tweet about that.
Yeah, there you go.
With McGovern going down, you do got some insurance in Jason Peters.
There you go.
Who, by the way, we asked Mike McCarthy about that, and he said that he is still up in the ramp-up phase.
Yes, I heard that. But
Can
we'll
you
see this
accelerate
week.
coming down that
But he said,
that
but
ramp?
we'll see this week. Can I?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Continue.
Silver lining for me, I'm going to go with the obvious, Micah Parsons. He showed up. He was ready to give Tom Brady the point of view of a lion attack, if you will. And he really, I think the first half of the game was better for him. And, to be quite honest, I don't blame him for the second half of not getting another sack. At that point, really, who was doing much? But Micah Parsons, you have to love that guy. You have to root for him. And he showed Tom Brady. What was that SpongeBob meme or the quote where he's like, "You want more of this, old man?" Like, he was ready to go, and he was disrespecting his elders. You just love to see it.
Kelsey?
I love the Micah Parsons one. That was one of my lists, too. His 2 sacks actually marks his 4th career multi-sack game, which I think is great. He's actually the only player in Cowboys history with 4 multi-sack games in his first 2 seasons, beating DeMarcus Ware. So we'll take that as a silver lining. I like that. Dalton Schultz. That was going to be a key for the game for me, and he did nothing less than follow through with his promises and continue to step up for this team. So he was a big silver lining for me, a little victory, if you will.
Why?
I'm sure we'll talk some more this week, but yeah.
Kelsey, why?
Honestly, for me,
there's not a lot of people
I really respect how Dalton has been able to. He's kind of like he's just kind of been like the safety net, and that's saying a lot for a guy that had minimal expectations coming onto this team. You didn't expect him to be a key part of this offense. Blake Jarwin goes down. He becomes one of your lead receivers. He's learning more so about being a better in pass protection. Like, I appreciate what he's been able to do for us. And again, yesterday too, let's face it, guys, our wide receivers, what wide receivers?
Mm-hmm.
It's a little abysmal right now. And Dalton Schultz has consistently been the whoopee. And I respect that. And he's going to continue to be the whoopee because Cooper Rush is going to need a big target to help him get through these couple games.
He was just a clutch guy.
He needed to be a bigger whoopee last night.
A whoopee? I still have my whoopee. I kept it.
I don't know what a whoopee is. Am I the
right.
only one that doesn't know what a whoopee is, guys?
You can tell I'm just disgusted talking about this team today, y'all. I'm just like, can we get done with the show? Because that's how I feel about.
I'm sorry.
No, you guys are fine. People are like, "Where's the optimism, Jane?"
I'm sorry.
It's just,
it's been a rough.
I've covered this. This will be now my 10th season. It's all the same. Okay, Cowboy safety, Jaron Kearse. I know people are curious about injury updates.
Yeah.
That knee is going to give him a problem. Looks like he's out. We'll see how long that is. Left guard Connor McGovern, the ankle. He told me in the locker room he was in a boot. He said they were looking for more X-rays to confirm how long it's going to be. It seems like it was the same one that gave him problems last time.
Interesting.
Stephen Jones said today about a month and a half. And we're still waiting on Terrell Basham news. Mike McCarthy didn't have an update on him. That looked painful.
It looked very serious.
As he was coming off the field.
Him.
So as we wrap up this show, Mike McCarthy said that the mantra this year is resilience. Told the fans, stick to the journey. Keep believing in us. We need to perform better. No. I need to perform better. I will perform better on Wednesday after I've had a night of sleep, and we can look forward to the Bengals game, which saw an epic collapse of their own last weekend against the Steelers. But guys, for all of you who've tuned in and listened, we look forward to chatting with you tomorrow. And I will not be on the show. Kelsey Charles will be leading the charge.
Heyo.
Heyo.
Hey. We'll miss you, Jane.
I won't. I'll be asleep.
For one whole day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!